All right, welcome back to another tutorial in Maya. Today, it's all about smashing stuff up. We're going to take some stuff and we're going to smash it up. But essentially, we're going to be working with what's known as a soft body. And we take a cube, a piece of geometry as a cube, and turn it into a piece of jello, basically. So, what you're seeing here is a soft body and just a little bit of a particle effect, some cloud particle effects. Obviously, the timing is not right, and it's I just did this as a demonstration to show you guys kind of what's up with the soft body. So, yeah, I just attached some textures here. This kind of looks like oatmeal. All right, this was just like a rust pattern, but anyway, you get the idea. It's something falling from the sky. It's hitting the ground. Now, this could be a model. It could be a car. It could be a piece of junk. I don't know. Whatever you want to make it, but anyway, you can make just about anything into a soft body. And what that does is it actually sort of takes the geometry and it makes each one of the vertices more like a particle. So we can add springs and tension and stuff and make it do all sorts of stuff, which is really cool. So anyway, just to kind of give you an idea what we're doing here, I'm going to sort of come up here and just let this, see if we can stop it there. You can see where when it hits, it does the deformations. When you have soft body going, it pretty much acts any way you want it to by painting on certain values on the geometry itself. So with that in mind, let me show you kind of what it looks like in the outliner. Basically have the plane, basically have a cube, but right now this cube, the original geometry is hidden. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my display, and we want to show that selection. And now you can see where this was the original geometry and this is the soft body contained kind of within it. Both of these are together, and so essentially one's a copy of the other, but we can get a little more complicated. Take a look at the copy of the cube. There it is. That's our copy, and that's our particle shape, basically. And then also I have springs going on in here, which they're hidden right now. So I'm going to come up and display, and let's just take a look at those. And there they are, lots of springs. So yeah, essentially that's how it works. Let's take a look at this as it goes through its stage. Boom. All right. So you can see where the springs are sort of holding in and giving more resilience to the surface of the soft body. So they're not always needed, but sometimes you might want to add them and have fun with those. Okay, so let's get started. As far as the particle effects go, if you want to check out Lester Banks, check him out every day because you'll get behind if you don't. He's pretty fast. Under the Maya tutorial section, there's a great tutorial by Pat Emery about creating a dust impact effect using Maya particles. So a really great 5-minute tutorial, 6-minute tutorial that kind of explains the bottom line basics of it and does a great job. He's a really good teacher. So we give him a Deep Fried Ectoplasm Award of Excellence in in education and communication, because this is a great little tutorial. All right. So anyway, let's get on with it. Let's take a look at maybe, I think what I'll do is I'm going to open up a different scene. I started one out here. We'll go ahead and hit save there. Where I made a basic geometry. Just make yourself a cube, make yourself a plane, do some little modifications on it if you want. Basically, just want to make this thing do the same thing, bump around a little bit. So here we go. The first thing you might want to do is just take your plane, make sure you're in your dynamics menu set, come up into your soft rigid bodies up here, and let's make that a passive rigid body. And if all goes well, that will be a passive rigid body. Let's take the this and let's make this the active rigid body because we want it to be active. And while we're at it, let's just take this and let's add the gravity field to it so that it will fall. All right, so now it has gravity. I have about 200 frames set up on the animation here, and if all goes right, it should tumble around, do its thing. And there it is. Okay, we'll work with that for the moment because really it's just about getting an idea. Now you can see how everything is stiff and rigid, and of course it's moving around in strange ways. You may want to come over here and select your. Let's see. Let's get. Well, let's just leave everything alone for a moment, and let's go back up in here to the top. Now, the cube up here is what we want to actually turn into our soft body. So go ahead and select the cube with your outliner there. And we're going to come up into soft rigid bodies, and we want to create a soft body. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the options here, and you'll notice where you have a couple of different ones: duplicate, make copy, soft. So basically that's what you want to choose, or that's what I'm going to choose right now, because it makes a duplicate of the geometry. So we'll have that, and if we need it for other things, which sometimes you might, so you can just make the object soft if you want and get rid of that duplicate, or you have the duplicate make the original soft. So anyway, just go ahead and choose this one right there, duplicate, make soft copy, and uncheck duplicate input graph, and leave these two checked, put it at 0.5, and we're good. I'm going to go ahead and hit apply, and we're going to see what happened in the outliner over here. Right away you'll notice that you have this copy, okay, and it's right there. Now let's take our original cube, because we don't really need to see this anymore for a moment or two. So let's take the cube here and go ahead and display, and we'll hide that. So we'll hide that selection. Now we can't see it. So if you select your copy, and you'll notice that you have your different things over here. Now let's just see what it looks like by default when we hit play. I'm going to go ahead and hit play. Okay, so now it's sort of springing about and it's doing some strange stuff. Okay, so that's something different. All right, let's work on that. Now that we have a soft body, let's sort of refine this a little bit more. I'm going to bring this outliner over here. I'm going to come all the way back to the beginning. And let's maybe zoom in on this. Let's see our box. And what we want to do is go ahead and select your copy of the cube, and it should be green like that. So make sure your copy of cube is selected and not your necessary particle. Just select your cube. All right, and then come up into the soft rigid bodies, and we want to paint soft body weights tool, and I'll go ahead and click that on the options. Right now you can see where it's set at, well, there's two different things we need to be aware of here. First, we want to basically replace that at 0.1. So I'm going to go ahead and click on replace and 0.1.0, or a value of 1. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and hit flood, and that just basically resets this to like 100% basically. And then we're going to start using this brush right here, which you can set your radius, and we're just going to paint on some values, but we're not going to do that quite yet. Well, I guess we could do it. We could do it now. Let's see. Let's bring our brush down a little bit. And now that we've replaced this, what we want to do is we want to sort of go into the replace mode, and let's say change this to say 0.500. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and hit flood. You'll notice where it turns a different color. Well, let's just see what that did. I'm going to do another thing here. Okay, so things are getting really springy. Okay, and that's just sort of a default all-around value, and that looks pretty weird unless you need something like that. So let's see if we can change that a little bit. But you'll see what happened by bringing this value, replacing this value overall. So let's say we start with, like, say 0.900 or something like that. Let's see what happens. We'll go back, do a quick thing. Well, all right, it's doing some crazy stuff. So let's set it back to 1. I'm going to go back to 1, and I'm going to hit flood. And now let's try something different. Let's try adding, say 0.250. Okay, and let's see if this brush. Sometimes you're going to be adjusting your values a lot over here. So let's set the overall to back to, like, say 0.500. All right, and I'm gonna just hit flood. All right. Oh, actually, you want to be on replace, 0.500 and flood. So we replaced everything on there with 0.500, and now we want to add. I'm going to go into the additive mode and add, say, 0.250, and I'm going to sort of click on the top here. Now you'll see where it's painting white. It's basically adding stiffness in or painting density in, and I may want to, sort of I'll just do some random stuff here and sort of show you. Just sort of click around, move around a little bit, put some values here and there, and this should give us a varied pattern of kind of gelatinous-y kind of stuff. All right, so I'm just going to stick with that for a minute. I'm going to go ahead and hit play, and you can see where, okay, things get really strange really quickly, and we definitely don't really want that. So let's leave it on additive. And let's say we do a smooth on this at the moment. Go ahead and click on smooth. Reset it to the beginning, and you'll see where on smooth it sort of evens things out for you. Sometimes you'll need to do that. So take the smooth and hit flood button, and you can see where it's sort of smoothed it out a bit. Now let's look at what happened. We'll go back to the beginning and take a look. So it's still pretty wonky, but that's what we're dealing with at the moment. So let's fix that. Let's go back to replace and start at scratch. I'm gonna put 1, and I'm gonna flood everything, and that should give us basically kind of where we want to be. Now let's go to say add, and let's go to, well, we don't want to do an add. Let's go back to replace and go to 0.900 and hit flood. Let's see, make sure I enter that, hit flood. All right, and let's see what it does. Okay, it's kind of springy, a little more springy. So let's go to 0.8. 0.8, and you can see what we're doing here. We're just playing around with these various levels of density to begin with, and then we're going to paint on the areas. All right, so let's go down to 0.700 and hit flood again. Now take a look at that, and this should be good to work with. We're going to sort of add some weight to it. All right, so we'll bring it back to the beginning. Let's take a look up here, and we're going to go with an additive, and let's add, say, 0.250 to this upper portion up here. All right, so we'll just sort of stiffen this area up a bit. And I'm going to come down here and just sort of do a quarter of it, or a half, whatever, and we'll see what happens. All right, and I'm going to go to smooth, and I'm going to do a flood a couple of times, and now let's see what happens. It should perform quite a bit differently. Yeah, you can see where one part is a lot more stiff than the other, and there it is. So let's back off a bit here. So we could go down and stiffen this bottom part up, or add more. This is really stiff down here, and this is stiff over here. So in the middle you can see where it's really reacting. All right, so maybe play around with this for hours and hours and hours, because this is kind of what it takes to sort of look at how to get good results from this method. All right, so I'm going to do an additive of 1.250, and I think I'll come in down here and just sort of add some stuff down there, and we'll just sort of stiffen this up in different places. So it's about using this artisan tool and creating various levels of density, basically, to make things happen. So let's see what happened there by just painting in some more values. We'll go down here. Okay, so you can see the more varied patterns that you get, the more deformation or, variations in deformation those values produce. All right. So essentially that's it. I mean, you're going to be playing around with this for hours, so we're not going to go on. I'm going to let you kind of play around with that on your own time. Now let's take this soft body and then let's add our springs. But remember that your soft body is connected to this cube, okay? If I were to just sort of minimize that, we have our copy of the cube and the cube there. Generally, I like to sort of take both of those and maybe group them together. Depends on what I'm working on. It's not always a good idea, but yeah, it doesn't want to let you do that. It made a group, but it doesn't necessarily like that. Well, anyway, essentially that's what keeps them together. So if I choose one, I can choose the group and then move the whole group at one time. I might want to reset my pivot point, but when you start modifying things, I'm going to modify this center pivot here, and let's just see if it messed with our overall. No, it didn't. Okay, good. All right, so now I have them both as a group, and they're basically up here is the center pivot, and I'm going to take that to the beginning, and let's move them over a little bit. So you can see where I'm moving something, but it's not necessarily anything other than the center pivot. But it does strange things if you move things after the fact, all right? So just be aware of that you're going to run into lots of lots of strange stuff like that when you start moving things around. So sometimes it's best to get your geometry placed where you want it, and then don't move it, or if possible, just while you're starting out and you're not really that familiar with this system. All right. So I think I'll just do a couple of Z's here, and I think I'll undo all of that. Yeah. All right. So let's see what we have. All right. Now, let's add the springs, because this is going to be fun. I'm going to go back to the beginning of the animation here. Let's get a close look at this. And what we want to do is select that copy of the cube right there. Select our copy and come up into your soft rigid bodies, and what we want to do is create springs, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the options there. That's going to bring you up a little window that looks like this, and you can give it a name. It's best just try and uncheck some of these. You don't want to do any of this right now. Leave it on wireframe method and a wire walk length of 2, stiffness at 100, damping 0, rest length 0, and leave end 1 and 2 at 1. All right, and yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and just apply that. I'm going to click and apply, and look at what I got there. I got springs. Okay, well, right away, let's take a look at what those springs are going to do. So let's sort of rewind our thing here. Okay, so now it's doing it's a little unpredictable. When you start out with this stuff, it's really unpredictable. So based on that starting point and the gravity and all that, now we can start adjusting some things. Let's look at these springs a little closer. And if you'll notice in your outliner, you'll now have what's known as a spring. And there's our spring, and here's our spring shape. And we do have a stiffness and a dampening. Essentially you can get some weird stuff if you use too much damping, but let's look at this stiffness for right now. Let's change it up. Let's take it maybe down to a low value of like 12. Let's just see what happens. All right, well, there's a soft body with springs, and there it is. Okay, let's take it down, or maybe all the way up to say like 200. See what happens. Oh, okay. So sometimes when you do extremes, this is going to get crazy on you. All right, so there it is, a little more bouncy. I don't know about that floating. Okay, so let's take that stiffness down a little bit. All right, you get the picture. That's essentially it. Let's take the springs down a little bit more. Maybe add a little damping. Let's just see what damping starts to do on it. Yeah, okay. Well, that's really strange. You get the idea. Play around with that as much as possible. And let's take a look at a couple of other things here. Let's get into the outliner. I think I can undo that. Let's take a look at the gravity field. That's affecting everything. So let's get up here and say, where is our gravity field? What's our magnitude? 9.8. So let's bring up our magnitude a little bit there on the gravity and see what effect that has. All right. So let's see here. Let's go back to our gravity. And I think I'll go back to the beginning of the animation and give it just a little bit more gravity, maybe a little attenuation. All right, so there it goes. That's a soft body. You can make just about anything you want. Now you can also go back and keep editing these paint weights. So now that I have the springs attached, I may want to go back in here and let's choose our copy of the cube there. And I think what I'll do is hide the springs. So I'll choose my springs and go to basically hide. We'll display and hide those. And yeah, so we'll choose this guy. Let's go back into the paint weights tool here. All right, and maybe do a additive of say like 0.250. All right, and I'm gonna come back here and sort of just scribble around here. We'll do some on the bottom, we'll do some on the side, come around to this side, bring a little in there, bring a little in there, maybe one on that corner. All right, now we'll see what happens with springs after we change that a little bit. All right. Okay, so there you go. That's it. That's all I got for you. So go forth, make yourself some soft bodies, and play around with the controls and stuff. And yeah, essentially it's pretty easy. So have fun, and as always, be a good person, read a book, and have a great weekend. All right, I will. See you on the next one.